Welcome to the Extra Mile podcast for bar exam takers. My name is Jackson Mummy, and each week we'll be bringing you updated information about the bar exam and what you need to do in order to make the next bar exam your last bar exam. Ready to get started? Let's jump to it. Welcome. It is Wednesday, June 28th, the last webinar of June, and next week we are into it, and we are in the month of July and counting down, and now at about 25 days or so until the bar exam, something like that. And we've got our panel here with us. Judge Dawson is here, June is here, Brianna's here, Amanda's here. So we are excited, and we're glad to have all of you with us today. We have a lot of questions that came in this week. Plus, I sent an email out this week to our students saying, what's your biggest challenge right now? And we got some great responses. And so we're going to do some rapid fire near the end of our time together today. And the panel doesn't know this, I'm just going to throw out these biggest challenges and see what the responses are from these experts who are here. So I want to jump right into a couple of quick announcements so we can get to the questions and make sure that we've got time to cover all that. June, you want to tell us about group coaching, first of all? I want to let you know about is that we now have 3 independent workshops, one for personal writing for essays, one for performance tests, and one for the MBE. We'll be talking a little bit about those as we get into the questions today, but I want to encourage you, if you are having any challenges with your essays or performance tests or MBEs, these are 2-session workshops, one-on-one. Brianna does the writing workshop, Amanda does the performance test and the MBE. We've got you doing double duty, Amanda. And it's still first come, first served. If you sign up for these, you get an immediate link to schedule your call with Amanda or Brianna. You go through the particular information on essays, performance tests, or MBEs in that first call. And then in the second call, you're assigned some work, either a performance test or an essay, or doing some specific MBEs. And then our coaches will walk you through it. And I think it's a great way to tighten up your studies. If you're struggling with what to be doing in terms of structure, I think this is also useful. And June can put those links up if you need them. You can also find them in your online course. And I would tell you that I think it's a really valuable thing to be doing. Pick and choose what you want, but these are resources that you're just not going to find anywhere else. So I encourage you to do that. The next thing I want to remind everyone about is that Bootcamp is coming up live here in Colorado on November 3rd and 4th. We already have several registrations, actually. We're limiting our registration list to only 15 people. So make sure that you get in there. If you're taking the bar exam in 2024, I think you're going to want to be part of this boot camp. It is a terrific experience. It's 2 days of live training with Tracy and June and myself. And again, small size. We're deliberately keeping it small. So be sure to get in and file your application. There's a $100 application fee that's fully refundable. I did have a call or a question from a July 2023 student who said, I'm not feeling like I may be ready for the July exam. Can I register for boot camp? And I said, yeah, absolutely. You can register for boot camp. If you don't need it, terrific. We'll drop it out and give you your money back. If you do need it, though, you're set up and you've reserved a seat. So be sure to do that. And again, June, I think you'll probably have the link up there for people to register for boot camp. So again, November 3rd and 4th here in Denver. Tracy assures me there will be no snow that weekend. So there you go. We hope. All right. And then at the end of our time today, if we've got a little bit of time, Tracy is going to talk about 25-1, which is different than 6-4 or any other Chicago song I can remember, but 25-1, which I think is a reference to a baseball score last week. So there you go. We'll see what she's got in mind for that. All right, with that, let me jump to the questions and then we'll do our biggest challenges, okay? First question that I've got on my list is, how should I be using the MBE questions in these last 30 days before the exam? Brianna, let me toss that one off to you to start with. What would you recommend to somebody in terms of how to use MBE questions right now?
So I think a lot of that depends on where these students are in their syllabus. First and foremost, I think you're utilizing your MBEs as you're going through the module, making sure that you're following that module. But I do think it's important to note when you're going through this course, If you feel like you haven't touched criminal law in a while, or you haven't touched something and you feel a little more uneasy about that topic, I don't think there is anything wrong with going in and grabbing a set of 25 and incorporating that back into your studies. If you are already in that review stage and you need to follow the syllabus and do the remaining MBE questions. If you are setting yourself up for the most success on the exam, if you get through as much as possible. So if you can get through every single one of those MBE questions, you're setting yourself up in a really good position to pass this exam.
Yeah, I agree with that. Amanda, I know you're doing our MBE workshop, so you've been dialed into the MBEs. What's your thought about this? How do you use these questions in the last 30 days?
Yeah, I agree with everything that Brianna was saying. Another thing to keep in mind is not to get overwhelmed if you're still getting questions wrong, and to use those opportunities to add to your mind map, solidify nuanced understandings of the law and how the examiners are asking the questions, and really just be curious. Instead of being frustrated about getting questions wrong still, because you're going to get questions wrong on the exam and we don't need to get them all right, just use that as an opportunity to become really curious, almost like it's a game, like you're trying to figure it out with those questions that got wrong. And yeah, go back to your mind maps, add to them, develop a new understanding, new connections in your mind. That's the best way you can do this right now. And then the other thing I'll say is I've been repeating this a lot to all my students. If you're to the point where you're getting to those practice exams soon, or you're trying to dial in selective intuition, practice the way you're going to take the questions on the exam. Get that in your head. Maybe if you're not in the spot where you're taking time questions yet, that's okay. Maybe you're not there yet because you're on a different study pace, but the same, if you're going to use selective intuition, buy into it. Start practicing it now, even if you're not under that 90-second per question time constraint.
Yeah. You mentioned selective intuition. We got some questions this week about selective intuition, and someone said, should I use it? And the answer is yes. Absolutely, you should use it. Selective intuition is really the key, in my mind, to making a good MBE score, because it allows you to use the non-conscious brain instead of trying to grind your way through to memorize and do flashcards, and to really be able to attack the question from a deeper sense and a deeper knowledge. Now, in the MBE workshop that Amanda leads, that's a big focus of what you're talking about is selective intuition and then how to apply it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
100%. Absolutely. I have found that students who are in the workshop, or even if you can't do the workshop, you're in the group coaching calls, talking through selective intuition is sometimes really helpful, because students, I think I might have said this last call, they think they're using it, but they're not. So if you do your practice MBEs and then you come and you talk about it, whether you're just doing the free group coaching or your selective intuition in the MBE workshop, or working on that one-on-one, I think students have found that really valuable.
Sandy's wants to know, should she stop at the 90 seconds, even though I have 25% more time?
No, if you've been given an accommodation, use the accommodated time for yourself. There's no problem with that. I think you'll find that you probably can answer a lot of these questions in less than 2 minutes. You could probably get there faster than that. And if you've got it, do it. But I'll also say this, don't change answers. Don't grind on these questions, just keep moving. And as you're practicing, to build on what Brianna said, practice the way you're going to take the test, practice under time conditions. I think one of the big mistakes people make right now is they start thinking, I've really got to grind through this question. I got to figure out the answer to it. And I'm going to spend 5 minutes working on it because it's only practice. That's not a good habit to build. So I'd like to see you building and working in that time frame that you've got. So again, if you want to know more about selective intuition, there are several lectures in the course, and you can sign up for the MBE workshop with Amanda and really get the experience. In fact, in that second call, you'll be assigned to do a series of questions under a time set of conditions, and then you and Amanda will go through it together. That's really a great way to get that experience. So lots of stuff there with MBE. I want to flip to essays for a minute, and I know we're going pretty quickly, but we've got so much to cover today. But we got a question. A student said at the end of one of your lectures, I mentioned 4-column analysis for reviewing the essay. What's a 4-column analysis? The 4-column exercise was something we did before we started mind mapping and before we did some of these other tools. And it was really just a way to go through and find the rules of law that you put in your essay and then compare it to the actual black letter law. It's not something we use a lot. So while there are some references to it, it wouldn't be my preference. What I'd really like you to do after you finish writing an essay is to go and mind map that answer, put it into your mind map, look at the model and sample answers and build it from there. So if you're looking for the 4-column exercise, you can find it in our YouTube channel, but I've actually withdrawn it from most of the course because I think it's too time consuming. Tracy, you've been doing a lot with your students in your group coaching calls around essay writing and working with analysis of their writing. Are you recommending to them to do mind maps after they've finished their essays?
Yeah, I think it's tremendously valuable to spend more time on the essay than just writing it and clicking send. It's very valuable, especially after you've received some input back from your coach, to then go back and look at your mind map and make sure if you have some inaccuracies in the law that have been cleared up, clear that up. If you found a little hack in there, then make sure that gets in your mind maps too. It's really important to do that and just to be thinking in terms of how do these parties relate to each other? How do they relate to the dispute? How does the law relate to their argument? And how does your conclusion relate to the whole ball of wax? And the best way to do that is to be thinking about that tree and the branches and how they relate.
Yeah, I think it's really important to be able to do that. And that's really the follow-up that I want people to be doing rather than 4-column exercise. So thanks for clearing that up. We got another question that was a fairly long question, but it's coming up more frequently these days. Student who's taking the exam in July said, I wanted to see if you had any thoughts or suggestions regarding typing versus handwriting my essay answers. The student went on to talk about why they wanted to handwrite and they were having some technological problems. And they had handwritten other exams before, some of which were successful for them and some of which weren't. I want to talk a little bit about this idea of handwriting versus typing, maybe get our panel's opinions as well. If you have listened to some of my lectures on this subject, I think you probably already know, I am not a fan of handwriting. You put fewer words on the paper, it's harder to organize your answers. It can be biased in terms of what the examiners and graders see. I think in general, when they see handwriting, they think the applicant is either technologically phobic, or they're old, or they're poor, or they're foreign. And if you put little flowers over your eyes, they probably think that you're a woman. The reality is that all of these things create subtle biases against the applicant. And for those reasons, I think it's a bad idea to handwrite. Most of the answers, well over 90%, are typewritten these days. So when you're handwriting, you really stand out in not a good way, in my view, from the rest of the crowd. But I understand that there are people that just don't want to type. And yet, I think you're going to do better even if you're a slow typist than if you're a fast handwriter. That's my take on it. Brianna, let me throw this one back to you. What's your take on handwriting versus typing?
I'm with you, Jackson. I'm a huge proponent of typing your exams. You can get a lot more words on the page. If you want to move your answer around, you can cut and paste, and sometimes when people are writing an essay, your focus can shift or you'll have an aha moment. And typing allows for those aha moments with more flexibility and ease than handwriting. If you were to misspell, if you cross through, it looks sloppier on paper. I don't have much more to add other than I would strongly encourage all of our students to absolutely type.
Yeah. Amanda, when you're talking about the performance test in your workshop, I know that's a particular focus. Handwriting versus typing, do you see a difference there for a performance test?
Yeah, I think the same thing. I was definitely nodding along with Brianna. There are so many aha moments, and I even tell students, listen, you're going to create your headings in the beginning, but you write them down and you don't know how much space you'll need for each heading. So it's a lot easier just to have the headings, bold them, and then be able to jump around if you need to. If something comes to, I really wrote this under the wrong heading, I can just copy and paste it down there. So I think if you can type, it's definitely a huge advantage to be able to do that.
Yeah, I think so. Tracy, when you and I took the bar exam, there wasn't an option to type, so you had to handwrite.
We did. And I spent considerable time before that exam learning how to write in block letters to mask my gender, because there is a subtle discrimination there, and it can take points away from you. It's just the reality of the world. Also, I remember some of those blue books and cross-outs and trying to write in really little words up above what you really meant, and it just looks sloppy. How in the world would you ever think that it would be okay in your law firm to write a performance test, a memo to the partner, or a memo to the client in handwritten form? You wouldn't have a job the next day. So again, we're talking about professional competence. You are taking a professional exam, so be a professional. Write your little Christmas cards and put your little flowers above if you're a guy, not necessarily a girl, if you're a guy. But when it comes to being an attorney, being a lawyer, then that is a piece of technology that you simply cannot do without.
Yeah. And I'll just say the deadlines have probably passed in most jurisdictions to be able to register for typing. So if you didn't register and you're stuck with handwriting, then my advice to you is to handwrite everything you're doing in these last 30 days, to work on what Tracy said, block writing, avoiding that bias, getting used to organizing. You're probably going to have to do a lot more outlining before you actually go to the document, whether it's an essay or a performance test, to make sure that it's well organized. And that you get as many words on the paper as you can, because even the fastest handwriter cannot go as many words as a slow typist. It's just a reality. So I think that's part of it. Now, having said all of that, I will say that every exam, we have some people that handwrite and they pass. So it can be done. It's just that you've got some things working against you, I think, in that situation. But if you're going to be a handwriter on the exam, make sure you're practicing the handwriting now so that your coaches can look at what you're doing, or that you have the opportunity to do that. The person that asked about handwriting versus typing said, my computer doesn't work. Every time I've gone to the exam, it hasn't worked. Look, I think there's a simple answer. Get a good new computer. Knock it off. This is a big deal. Don't use your old crappy 2005 Windows 4 computer, and make sure that you've got a good power source, a good mouse to use, that you've got it backed up. I'm constantly amazed. I don't know, Brianna and Amanda, you've seen this as well. People go to the exam with an old crappy computer and they don't have it backed up. They've got other stuff running on the computer. They don't have their peripherals. They don't bring their chargers. And then they say, it didn't work. Duh. It's to Tracy's point. You got to be professional. And this is part of the professional tools. I see Brianna laughing. You've seen this happen.
I know. Prepared for the exam. I went and I bought a brand new laptop, and I did not save a single thing to that device until after the exam. Everything went onto my external drive. Y'all, I have this massive, I took my keyboard and my USB and my mouse, and you just have to practice using the technology. It's not going to fail you. You can download that software in advance. And as long as you practice using the software, you make sure that your laptop is up to speed with it, you're going to be just fine. And we talk about fear a lot. If you're fearful it's going to happen, maybe it will, probably will. But yes, you've got to let that fear go. And at some point, just trust in your stuff. But definitely get some new hardware.
Amanda, you have any thoughts about this?
Yeah, I agree, and I think the same thing as Brianna, nodding along, because I did the same thing. I did the same thing both times, and yeah, I I remember doing it in New York because I was in a completely different financial situation when I took it that many years ago. So if you can't purchase a new laptop or you have no one that you can borrow it from, I totally understand. And I did go in there with an older device, but making sure I had my charger and I had deleted everything off my computer and I had tested the exam software a million times. And that was when still online exam taking was very new too. So there's a lot of horror stories as there are now. And the other thing I tell people is to practice writing their essays in a similar platform. Don't write in Word, write in Notepad and things like that, and write it open with a blank screen. Even that is part of preparing for using the technology, especially if you were someone who considered handwriting. So do that.
Absolutely. And by the way, it just causes me to think, if you're sitting in DC, you're going to wear a mask for 2 days. So you should probably just start putting the mask on when you study, just to get used to that. Okay. I think the panel agrees you should type if you can. If you have to handwrite, make sure that you're taking all the necessary precautions to mask a little bit of the writing there. We got a question this week, and this is the time when I tend to get a lot of photo reading questions, but I thought the most interesting of the photo reading questions, students said in the syllabus, we say an assignment, for example, should take 3 to 4 hours to complete. But if you go down, the photo reading section says 15 minutes to read and 1 to 2 hours for mind mapping. And the question was, as photo readers, are we supposed to spend the shorter period of time, so the 2 hours plus, for mind mapping? What do you do with that? And the answer is yes, that's exactly what we want you to do. You save time when you're a photo reader. Don't waste that. You only need 15 minutes, and frankly, you need less than 15 minutes to photo read an outline, and then use a couple of hours to mind map. What I don't want you doing is I don't want you photo reading for 5 or 10 minutes and then mind mapping for 8 hours. That is not necessary, doesn't add anything at all. But the student said, is a photo reader working this section in half the time of a non-photo reader? Yeah, that's why we want you to photo read. It's the great advantage, it's the great beauty of photo reading. So make sure that you're doing that and that you're staying within those timeframes. We have allocated, I have set this up in a way that if you'll follow the timeframes, you will get there, you'll be ready in time. One of the really frustrating questions I get consistently at this stage of study is somebody says, I'm really far back in the studies. And I say, how long are you taking on an assignment? If it says 3 to 4 hours, and they say, I'm taking 5 to 8. Like, hello, that's why you're behind. There's not a reason. You don't need to go. You don't understand. I'm special. Yeah, I do understand. You are special. Use 3 to 4 hours. That's what you need to do. We heard it at Bootcamp a lot. Trust the process. I don't do things, and I haven't created this course haphazardly. Everything that's in there is intentional. Mostly the timeframes. I'm very specific about those timeframes because I know that if you keep moving at that pace, you'll be fine and you'll get enough repetition that you'll learn. The problem is people grind on a subject. They think they've got to spend longer on it, and then they get stuck. And then they say, I can't figure out why I'm behind. And that's the biggest reason that you might be behind. So something to keep in mind. One other note about timing and tests and MBEs. This coming Saturday, if you're taking the July exam, you will get an email from me. It's the day 24 email. It's the most important email in the course, in which I go through all of the MBEs and practice MBEs, and I give you benchmarks, and I tell you when to take them, how long you should spend doing them, how to score them, all of that. It is a very lengthy email. It's very dense and dry. I think it's putting it nicely. But this is the one you should print out and you should keep for reference, even if you're not at that point yet. So I just want to alert all of you in the course for July's exam that this Saturday's email, the day 24 email, don't skip that one. You're going to want to have that, and it's going to help you with timing and those other pieces. So, if you're a photo reader, keep photo reading. If you're not a photo reader, I would say now we're probably too close to the exam for you to add photo reading if you're taking the July exam, but everybody else should be doing it. If you're taking the exam in 2024, please consider photo reading. It does make a big difference. All right, speaking of 2024, we got a couple of questions from students in the 2024 exams, and I want to make sure we cover those today. One of them said, I'm taking that February 2024 exam, but I'm not going to start my studying until September. I'm just going to say, don't wait until September. I think that's a mistake. If you're already registered and you're in the course, you should be studying now for February 2024. I think that is critical to giving yourself enough time to repeat the information, to learn and not have the pressure. And I suspect if you asked a lot of the July students right now, what they would, if they would have liked to have started earlier than they did, most of them would say, yes, I wish I had. Brianna, what's your take on, because you work with the time management workshop, do you think a student should deliberately wait till September if they've got access to the materials now?
Absolutely not. The sooner you get started and you get through your substantive, the sooner you can make your way through all of the review and all of the other stuff that Celebration has to offer on the backside. I personally started studying in May, beginning of June for the February 2020 exam. So it's the sooner you get started, the sooner you can jumpstart your studies, and the less hours you have to put in right now. You don't need to be studying 20 to 30 hours right now. Now, if you wait till September, you might have to be putting in quite a few more hours per week. But if you have a full-time job, right now you're really looking at about 10 hours a week. I couldn't encourage those students more to get started today.
Yeah. Amanda, you had a relatively short study period, but that was not so much by design as by circumstance. If you had it to do over again, would you still try to do it in that short time frame?
No, definitely not. We know that I got COVID at the end of my studies, and I was really worn down at the end. So I do my best to learn from me and all of us here who had done it. And also, life does happen. So the earlier you can get ahead, the better off you'll be, because when life happens, you're ahead and you can catch up. I had time for no mistakes. I just really had to push through. So you don't want to be in that situation if you can avoid it. So if you have the choice, do it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's pretty clear. Student said, is there any special help you can give me? You've just gotten our special help. Start now. But I would say, as a foundational piece, I would look at taking the personal writing workshop. I would look at the performance test if you're in a jurisdiction that does that. I'd look at the MBE workshop. I'd look at the time management with Brianna. If you're thinking you're going to wait till September, you clearly have some time issues that I think you probably need to work on. So there are a variety of tools that we offer, and you get to pick and choose. But look, if you're already registered and you just decided to defer to February, which is fine, you could do that. Don't take your foot off the gas. That's the big mistake. People are registered for July. They postpone to February and they think, I'll take the rest of the summer off. Big mistake in my view. This bar exam is not something you can take lightly, and you should be studying now for February. So yay to those of you that are getting ready for the February exam and are actively involved. For those of you that are thinking that you might have to postpone or you just postponed, do not stop studying. I want you to hear that really clearly. That is a fatal flaw in my view. All right. One last question before we get to biggest challenges. We had a student that just signed up and said, can everything in the course be found on the web? Yes, it's all there. Everything you need is there. Digital books, PDFs, lectures, online practice questions, it's all there. And the student said, are there books or such? Well, there are books. You can buy them for an extra fee. They're exactly the same thing that's online. And the beauty of the online is when we add new materials like we've just done with the UBE questions and other things, they are right there for you. If you've got a set of printed books, obviously your books become out of date as soon as they ship to you. You don't need the books. If you want them, you can get them. But really, the digital material is so much easier to use, in my view. You can do word searches and all kinds of other cool things. But everything you need is right there. And I'll just say, you don't need any other courses. You don't need flashcards. You don't need, I won't name the companies. You just don't need that stuff. This course is, I think, as comprehensive as any course, probably more comprehensive than any course in America. So there you go. All right. So we got through the questions. Thank you, panel. Now we're going to go to biggest challenges. And let me just explain what we did here. I sent out an email to our students yesterday, day before, and I said, at this point, about 25 days to the exam, what's your biggest challenge if you're in the July exam? What's your biggest challenge? And we got lots of responses, more than we can probably deal with. But I thought we'd just do a rapid fire around the horn, get responses from our coaches. I'm going to put them on the spot and we'll throw it out and see what they have to say. And you can hear their responses. So here's our first biggest challenge. My biggest challenge is not getting enough done to move on to review. All right, Brianna, I'll throw that out to you. What's your response to that?
If you're not getting enough done to move on to review, you're probably not making your bar exam studies a priority. You're probably not making that time to actually sit down and study in the allotted time given to you. Maybe you're not showing up for yourself, or maybe you've got a lot going on. I highly recommend first turning inwards and saying, okay, am I really doing everything I possibly can? Am I carving out enough time to study and get through? The next thing I would recommend is setting up a timetable to figure out when you're going to get to your actual review phase. If you need to be listening to the lectures at a faster speed, you can definitely consider doing that. If you need to consider skipping the reading, I think Jackson recommended that in one of his emails. At this stage, that's a great thing to move it along, but you've got to be focusing on your why and show up for yourself.
Thanks. All right. Next biggest challenge. My biggest challenge is how to comprehensively but succinctly complete the MPT on time. I got to give this to Amanda. How do you deal with that one?
Yeah. So time management's a huge part of the MPT. Time management's a huge part of success on the bar exam overall, both day to day, but in that within the bar. And I think holding yourself to those time standards that you set for yourself is so important. So in the MPT workshop, we focus a lot on that. Focus a lot on how much time do you have in the library, how much time do you have in the file, how much time are you going to take to organize, and then when you do your headings, actually breaking it down there too. Some headings might be more than others, but you know roughly, okay, I got 15 minutes for each heading, and just being disciplined about it. There's a lot of discipline that comes with the MPT because you could really just kind of go off and elaborate and go into a lot of detail that's not required of you and is really only going to hurt you. So the discipline of practicing and staying within the time plan set with you is really important.
Yeah, I would just add practice really makes a difference on performance tests and practicing under time conditions. I hate it when somebody does a performance test and I say, how long did it take you to write? And they go, oh, 2.5 hours. You don't get that. So you got to do it under time conditions. Okay, thanks, Amanda. All right, the next biggest challenge, putting it all together in order to pass. Tracy, what would you say to somebody? How do you address that one?
Through mind maps, definitely through mind maps. You have got to figure out what the core is in each of these subjects and then get your mind maps so that you can use them. That is going to be the way that you relate things one to another. Practice on your writing, practice identifying what the relationship is between the parties and making that the first thing you write in your fact statement. And that kind of flows you through. Also, just what Amanda said about making sure your headings count, because your headings are a good barometer of what time you have left and whether you're moving through the points that's being asked in the question. I'll tell you, I've said it before, and maybe the student wasn't on, or maybe they didn't listen, but I have gone back to using a paper calendar because this is my retired life this morning. But you can see I have different colors and things like that. A paper calendar is a really good way to put it all together right in front of you for this last month. Just print out a July calendar, put in what you're going to be doing, and you can see the whole big picture between now and the time you take the exam. You can't do that on your phone, but you can do it visually in front of you.
There you go. Good. Thank you. Next biggest challenge, getting focused, keeping focused, and getting the absolute most out of my effort. I always feel like I could have done more or done something better. Who wants to take that one? Any volunteers to address that one?
I would say don't let perfect be the enemy of good. I'm sure that many people could have done better on the bar exam because no one gets a perfect score. So yeah, you could have done better. But if you're getting stuff in and you're studying continuous, uninterrupted, disciplined study day after day, week after week, I think that is important because sometimes we don't see that progress right away. You don't have to be perfect, just kind of have to keep working towards the end goal during this time.
Yeah. And I would add, there's a great paraliminal recording on focus that's worth listening to. It's in the paraliminal pack, or it's in mindtracks.com. So check that out. But I agree. You can always do more, but you're never going to go to the bar exam feeling like you've done everything. So stop setting that as your expectation. I think sometimes people set that expectation and then they say, well, of course I wasn't ready because I didn't know everything. Come on, be realistic about what you're doing. All right. Next, biggest challenge, minimizing distractions and unexpected interruptions. Brianna, what do you do with that?
Yeah, no, this also correlates with the focus. So I think that these will go and tie in together, but minimizing distractions and unexpected interruptions. So that would mean do not have your phone on you while you're studying. When you are trying to compartmentalize your life between breakfast, lunch, dinner, family time, work time, study time, you have to be 100% there for each of those different moments in your life. So when you're studying, make sure you don't have your phone on you. Make sure you have turned off any notifications on your computer. Don't be looking at emails and stuff while you're trying to get your studying done. A great way that you can turn off a lot of your outside noise is turning off your social media notifications. If you go onto your phone or on the internet and you're going through, I don't even know all the social media outlets out there anymore because I just removed it completely from my phone altogether because I knew it was a distraction, and turning off that noise is 100% going to help your focus. Focusing on, so minimizing distractions. Let's see, those are the unexpected interruptions. Focus on you right now. You have less than a month to be selfish, to focus on your goals, to keep your eye on the prize, and try to stay in this narrow tunnel vision of the bar exam and everything you can do. If you're trying to wake up early, keep your phone in the other, have to get up and go turn your alarm off. Those are all just great tools to try to minimize those distractions and interruptions.
Thank you. Next biggest challenge was sustaining a level of physical and mental energy to keep the study and review pace. That's a tough one. Amanda, I know you're a runner. You do a lot. Actually, Brianna's pretty active as well. Tracy's active. I'm the least. But Amanda, how would you respond to that?
We've been talking about this a lot too in coaching calls, I think, as the other coaches have as well. There's no way about it that it's very hard to, I wouldn't recommend studying 50, 60 hours a week or to just only focus on the bar exam. You still have to do the things to not only take care of yourself, but repair yourself from all this hard mental taxing work that you're doing. So you do still have to remember to go to the gym, take a walk, get outside, stand up and stretch, have dinner with your kids, just stop and smell the flowers that are outside. Maybe you're not going to go away for the 4th of July and take a whole vacation right now, but you need to take breaks and get sleep.
Yeah, and I would just say it's perfectly acceptable to go watch a fireworks display and cook some hot dogs on the grill on July 4th. You don't have to study all day. Some of you will because you're just getting started, and I understand that. But if you've been working steadily, you can get some studying done early in the morning, unless you're in a parade, and then you can go enjoy the time with your family. The big mistake people make around a holiday is they try to multitask. And this just drives me nuts. They go to the family barbecue and they bring their bar review materials with them at the picnic table. That's just dumb. You're going to irritate everybody in your family. Your studying's not going to be any good. And everybody's going to remember that you were a jerk around the 4th of July. And that's the story that'll stay for the next 5 or 10 years. So it's just not worth that. If you've been doing what we've been asking you to do, you have enough time and you can take time for these events, whether it's a holiday or something else, and be just fine. So I think that's something to keep in mind. All right, couple of biggest challenges before we get to 25 to 1 from Tracy. The last one, or next last one, was My biggest challenge is not second guessing my intuition when I'm doing multi-state bar exam questions. Oof, that's a tough one. You've got to learn to trust yourself and to know that the information is there. When people second guess, they almost always get it wrong. That's just the reality. And that's why 90 seconds is the time frame that we talk about. It's the sweet spot. When we get to 100 seconds or 120 seconds, I can tell you, you'd be better off just guessing and picking a letter, because you're just not going to get the answers right at that point. Brianna, you want to add anything to that?
Yeah. And it comes with practice. So you have to practice using the intuition. If that means you don't look at the answer, you don't look at that review, and you need to do 10 questions practicing that selective intuition and just going, that's what you do. And then you can go back and do them in groups and review your answers. But you've got to, I improved my score over 25 points on the MBE from overthinking, over-analyzing, not even getting through the MBE question sets, and just circling C all the way down to using selective intuition and having 20 minutes to spare on the end of it. It can be done. It should be done. Use the selective intuition. You have to practice it. If you don't practice it, you're going to continue to use that you're going to go wishy-washy with your answers, and you're going to go back and be like, dang it, I had it right and I changed my answer and now I've got it wrong. So just practice.
It's a killer. It's really a killer to do that. And then the last of the biggest challenges was practicing enough under time constraints. We got a lot of those. Look, you got to be working under time constraints right now. When the clock turns to where we are right now, everything has to be done under time conditions. You write your essays under time conditions, you do your MBEs under time conditions, you do your performance tests under time conditions. It is no use to write an essay if you're in the UBE and you're taking 40, 50, 60 minutes to write a 30-minute essay, you're in trouble. You got to get to 30 minutes. If you're doing Florida or California, you got to be at an hour. If you're doing Georgia, you got to be at 45 minutes. There's just no getting around that at this point. And one of the things I say to students, and I think I probably said it to both Brianna and Amanda when we were going through, was if you had to write it, if I was sending you a ransom letter and I said, if you want to see your pet dog Fluffy again, you got to write this essay in the allotted time. Could you do it? The answer is, of course I can. And so why don't you? It's because you're in practice and you think, I'm going to be more leisurely. The time for leisurely practice is gone. This is now the time when you have to start working in these time constraints, whether you like it or not. You just have to. And it becomes an excuse to say, I can't write an essay in 30 minutes or 60 minutes. That's ridiculous. Of course you can. You just aren't motivated enough to do it yet. And so I have no sympathy here. And I know I'm the hard guy, but really, there is not a reason that you can't write 750 words for a UBE essay in 30 minutes, or 11 or 1200 words for Florida or California, or 900 for Georgia. You can do it. And I've seen people do it who are arthritic, who can type with one finger, who have all kinds of disabilities. It can be done if you're motivated. And so it's a cop-out to say I can't. So that's on his soapbox. Stepping down from my soapbox. Oh, June's looking at me. Okay. Yes, June. Go ahead.
Let me come in with a little bit of a softer side.
Okay, fine.
We do want you to begin that now, because when you practice something, you become proficient at it. And when you're proficient at something, you're comfortable. You don't get anxious. You don't get nervous. You don't get afraid. You know what to do and how to do it. In my group coaching call, I talk about driving a car a lot. Anybody on this call who's been driving for a while, do you get in your car and do you go, oh, I have this key thing. Okay, let me put the key in the ignition. Okay, let me turn it. The right pedal, does that go or does that stop? Nobody does that. It's muscle memory. You get in your car, you do what you got to do, you go. Because you've done it for so long, you're comfortable, you don't even think about it. If you start now under time conditions, it does not become anxiety driven because you're comfortable with it. So that's why a big reason to do it is so that you do become proficient and you do become comfortable with it. And so the day of the exam, you've got that extra comfort with you to take you through.
And that's why you should come to boot camp, because June softens up my message a lot. So there you go. Thank you, June. That's great. And thank you, panel, for your rapid fire responses. We will do biggest challenge every week from now through the exam. So if you've got a biggest challenge as we're going along, go ahead and send it in to us and we will try to respond. I wanted to save a few minutes for Tracy, for Judge Dawson to, I don't think you're robed up today, but I know you wanted to talk about 25 to 1. And as always, I'm curious to see what that is and where you want to go. So the floor is yours.
Thank you. No, I'm not judge today. I am a Colorado Rockies fan. I am big into baseball, folks. And last Saturday, when a friend was in town, I bought tickets to go to the Rockies and LA Angels game. And along about the third inning, the Angels scored 13 runs. And along about the 14th inning, it was 17 or 19 to nothing. And we left. And we drove home. And I was very disappointed because I wanted this friend to have a great experience at baseball. And she was trying to convince me that she had the great experience. But I got home in time to see the end of the game, which ended up at 25 to 1. And the Angels broke all kinds of records and the Rockies broke all kinds of records, but not the good kind. So I listened to what the manager, Bud Black, said. And one of the questions posed to him is, aren't you totally embarrassed? Don't you just want to give up right now? What's the point in the season? Why are you even bothering to show up tomorrow? And he said, guys, it's one game. It's one game. There's another game tomorrow. And we will show up for that game tomorrow. And we'll learn from this game that we lost, but we will put our best foot forward tomorrow. And in fact, the Rockies did beat the Angels on Sunday, and they took the series. So I'm just taking everything that the coaches have said today and really building on what June is saying about not getting down on yourself if you screw up one day and you don't get everything done that you want to get done, or you take some MBE questions and you only get 6 right, or you write an essay and 30 minutes into the essay, you only have a third of what you need to be writing. Why not just throw in the towel, say, forget it. I'm a loser. I can't do this. Everybody knows it. Look at my score sheet. So I want to remind you to bring Bud Black into your heart and your head that day and remember that it's just one game. And tomorrow you have another chance. And that goes whether you have taken the bar 1 time before, 0 times before, or 12 times before. That was that game. Now you're playing this game. Go Rockies, go CBR. You guys can do it. Tomorrow is another day.
Oh, awesome. Thanks, Tracy. Brianna, I know this message resonates with you because you went through some of those disappointments and discouragements, and then you just refocused and said, okay, I'm going to forget all that. I'm going to go and make it happen. And you made it happen in a big way.
Yeah, I did. And it's such a great reminder, Tracy, that tomorrow is a new day. It's one of those things that just reminds me, and I'm sure my students have heard me say this time and time again, one of my favorite proverbs, the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The second best time is today. It's right now. Today is the first day of the rest of your life. You get to choose how you're going to show up today, how you're going to show up tomorrow. And I love that reminder. It's hard. Even at home, I had that today is the first day of the rest of your life on a note card that was facing me every single day, just to remind myself it doesn't matter how today ends. It's tomorrow. I'm going to try to be better. And yeah, your entire life, you are going to have failures and disappointments, and you're going to hear no over and over again. Be resilient, be Find that resilience within you to find your yes. Tear down all of those walls, the continual no's, find your own journey, find your own path, find your yes. And you will be successful.
There's a lot of wisdom on this panel, and there's a lot of experience. And I hope that you will take this to heart, because this is the time when people can get discouraged. Don't be discouraged. This is the moment when you begin to face this exam and say, you know what, I'm ready to do it. I want to do it. I'm going to really build on these next 25 days. I'm going to learn something new every day. I'm going to move towards this goal. If you haven't been on the coaching calls with Brianna or Amanda or Tracy or June or Bobco or Sammy, there's a lot of options there and a lot of opportunity to get that boost that you need going in. So Trace, thanks for that. That's a great message.
Jackson,
Thank you. Yes, ma'am. Go ahead.
I just want to tag on to Tracy because I love that story. It's not always about you. Some days we just have a bad day, an off day. One day you score a 90 on a quiz, and the next day you do 30. And that's where I see students go and lose all their confidence. It doesn't mean anything. Maybe you had a bad day. We all do, and we can't explain why these things happen. I woke up Saturday and my car wouldn't work, so it just happens. Life happens, and sometimes you just got to chalk it up. And again, like Tracy said, you start over again the next day. And to everybody that's on this call, congratulations, because as of today, you have 100% survival rate. So get out of survival mode and get into achieving mode and be confident and trust yourself. You all have the capability and ability to do this.
Thank you all. It's great to see everybody. Reminder that we will be back next Wednesday. It's the day after the 4th. So I don't know how many of you are going to be with us, but we'll be here and we'll take on more of those biggest challenges and we'll bring you more information. And we hope everybody has a great holiday, great and safe if you're traveling, and that you get a lot of good studying done, but also be balanced. You don't have to be in full panic mode. I think that's what you heard today. Thank you all for joining us. Thank you, Tracy, Brianna, Amanda, June. Great to have you all here. And we'll see you again next week. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.